item? Perfect. Then I'd like to call the meeting of December 5th of the Board of Directors to order, please. Secretary Wolf, would you please lead us in the pledge? Mr. Kiliani, could you please read the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Jimenez, Marissa Gutierrez, Louis Martinez, Arthur Meyer, Cliff Walters, Leonard Board, here. James Wolfe,
here.
Audrey Edmondson, Smith Fano. Okay, you have a quorum.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to know if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda. Mr. Zaldívar, I would like to add an item, number 8E, for approval. It is a resolution that is included in the members' folders. Can I have a motion to approve the revised agenda, please? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving forward, General Counsel, declaration of voting conflict.
Do any members of the board have to report any council with any items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move forward.
Time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make a comment on an item that's on the agenda. None, hearing none, we'll move forward. Thank you very much. Can I have a motion for the approval of the summary minutes?
Move.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Passed. Mr. Executive Director, how are you this afternoon?
I just caught my breath, so I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Thank you, Madam
Great.
Chair.
If you could provide your report, we'd appreciate it. And also include the TPO report.
I will include the TPO as well.
Thank you.
And I'll be brief. Board members, on Thursday of last week, November 30th, we mailed out all the checks for the rewards program. The interesting data is that as of this morning, 32% of the checks have already been cashed. We also opened registration for 2018's new registration. As part of the registration, we included a survey that we're asking everyone who registers to sign up on. As of this morning, 4,500 people took the survey. The interesting data there is that of the 4,500, 2,500 are existing customer rewards members, 2,000 are new members. So in just a few days, we've got 2,000 new members who have already registered. The interesting thing about the survey, and I'll read a couple of the questions, and it's in your packet, but again, we asked if they would support extending 836 South and West, and 86% of the respondents said overwhelmingly yes, that's what they would support. We asked the respondents, how'd you hear about the frequent driver rewards program? The majority, over 56%, heard through word of mouth, friends and family. And in second, the second was the website at 16%, and then all the other mediums. Another question that we asked was, would you use the XT lanes if there was some form of public transit service and it was convenient to you with no stops? About 52% said yes. 37% said that that's not the service area that they use. So we're going to wait as we get more data, but we're going to be tracking this information. There's still a huge misconception of what MDX does and what roadways we operate, and it's prevalent in some of the questions, in one of the questions. And then we also asked the question, as we've discussed with the board in the last few meetings, we are crunching numbers along with the treasurer, our traffic and revenue consultants, about the opportunity for prepaid monthly passes. So we've asked the question, of the public. And as of today, you know, the majority, 71%, said that they wouldn't be interested in it. It's simply, you know, they want to keep their money until they use it, and they don't want to prepay. But again, we'll continue to monitor this. We'll back it up with the data that we have, and we'll be presenting to the board, you know, I think in the springtime, some of the information that we found.
What advantage is there to give a toll agency their money ahead of time? It's the
Yeah.
same thing as the SunPass. You have to pay for something you're not using, and then they start clocking it off. So what advantage is there to have a monthly pass?
I think the issue is going to be
For an
what the level.
expressway.
I think the issue is going to be at what level do you do it, what the monthly amount is, and then marketing it to the people who would actually benefit it. And then what's the cost to the agency? All those variables are what we are
Yeah,
going to
but you
have to
still
look at.
didn't answer the core question, which is the benefit. Is there a discount? If there's a discount, okay, then there might be a consideration. But I mean, when you got 73%, 72% of the people saying, are you kidding?
It goes back to data, and I guess I'm going to get ahead of myself, but it goes back to data. We looked at the data. The majority of the traffic that uses the MDX highway system spends less than $25 a month. Actually, the average is closer to the $10 a month. There's a lot of short trips, and there's many, many, many infrequent users on the expressway system. And that is why the data doesn't support it, because of the makeup of the traffic. That's why we're doing the data, but we'll bring it back to you. We'll show you the curve. We'll show you the data points. We'll show the analysis, but it is something the board asked us to look at, and we're reporting on it as we make progress and collect the data.
Exactly, some type of motivation, right?
So, on December 12th, you know, this goes back to the extension of Gratigny East. On December 12th, staff is going to make a presentation to the North Miami City Commission at the request of their mayor, Joseph. He's asked us to go and make a full presentation to their commission, many new commissioners. He's interested in seeing that project move, and he wants to get a position from his commission. So we'll be there on the 12th to present the project and show them where we are and how we can connect to 95 and a potential time frame. As it relates to the TPO, Madam Chair, you asked about the TPO. Last month's meeting was canceled, but there's been many committee meetings. The focus of the TPO over the last month and a half or so has been to discuss and to focus on funding of the SMART plan, and primarily the north and south. I think the TPO took a position that the north and south would be their priorities to move forward first. I think MDX is moving forward with the east-west, and then there's the other three that are still in the study phase. So the focus has been on that. They're looking at all different funding sources, and I know that the Department of Transportation is fully engaged in all of those conversations. With that, Madam Chair, I will stop. And there's a lot on the agenda that then I can answer questions as we go along.
Javier's trying to go through fast because of the holidays. But I would like to recommend that all of you please review the survey results, because for me, it pops out when it asks about MDX roadways. Which of the following expressways do you believe is operated by MDX? And almost 47% said all of the above. But that's frightening. Ms. Gutierrez.
Sarah, I think it's very enlightening, though. It tells you that they think they're riding MDX, and that where they're really paying, because I was just privy to some information, that basically what's happening is they're riding some other expressways. They're not riding our expressways, yet we're the ones that get the impact of the people being upset that they're paying these high tolls. Apparently, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, I pay very high tolls on those managed lanes. I mean, sometimes they're Ikes, they're really bad, they're sky high. And soon enough, I think the Palmetto is going to be getting one too. So there's going to be another ay. I really think that we need to seize the moment and the opportunity, and we need to have bigger identifiers of the MDX expressway, bigger identifiers. The moment that you walk in, the moment that you're driving into one of those lanes, that there's striping out there that says MDX. So you know that you're on an MDX. And that's followed up with a major campaign on the air and direct mail to all these folks that says, you know, if you're not on an MDX road, XX, whatever you want to say. But I think that we need to focus, and now is the time. Because, you know, when all those other managed lanes come online, we're going to get whacked. You guys are so lucky, you're hiding behind MDX. So, my goodness, you can tell, no wonder the turnpike's so quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez.
Madam Chair, if I may, to that notion, I mean, this data actually supports what happens in a lot of urbanized areas that have a lot of different expressway systems. The trips are not long, they're short. Many commuters, many drivers don't pay attention to what highway. They want to go from point A to point B, whether it's the Oklahoma Turnpike or a state road, whatever, is immaterial to them. They're driving one road and another. So it is not uncommon to see this kind of response in a condensed, in a dense, urbanized area with a lot of different facilities. So this is just panning out. It's panning out what we've seen.
Any questions for our director?
It's too early. Next
Thank you
meeting.
very much, Javier. Appreciate that. Mr. Board, will you be providing the treasurer's report?
A very brief one, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I skipped over general counsel, no offense, sorry. I was just trying to get to the numbers.
I would call Mr. Board first, too.
Just three items. I think that the executive director has outlined very preliminary results of the analysis of what our customers, the frequency of their usage, and what the monthly numbers are. We were privy to a very preliminary report. We've asked the consultants to expand the data set, so instead of having 2 months, we can have a fuller set. Hopefully, we'll have that in the next few iterations of the board. The second item that I would like to review is an action item that we have on the board, which is the approval of the CAFR. And then we have a really enlightening discussion from First Southwest regarding the financial consequences, what all the scenarios are. And it's a very good presentation, and I will cut my presentation short to give them more time. It'll be an ample discussion today. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Board. Mr. Counsel, I'm sorry again.
None taken, real quick. First, I'd like to give you an update on the ETC litigation. Closing arguments were given on November 3rd. We're currently waiting for a decision. The judge was very professional and treated both sides in a similar manner. He gave no indication on which way he's going to rule, and I can't even guess how long it's been, but it's been 32 days since we've been there. Javier reminds me every morning. Number two, update on the Attorney General's opinion on legislation. On November 28th, I contacted the Attorney General's office and requested an update. The attorney handling the matter, and I quote, "It's in the finalization process and it will be ready soon," but she could not give me a date. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Zaldívar. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. But I just want to make a comment. Some of the items, B, C, D, are on this consent agenda due to the fact that we did not have quorum at the joint meeting on November 16th. Hopefully, in the new year, my wish for Christmas will be that we'll avoid this happening again. Thank you. Mr. Counsel.
Yeah, I'll start off with automatic travel approval, January 25, 26, 2018, trip to Orlando, Florida by Board Member Meyer and the Executive Director to attend Team Florida annual meeting. I'll read this into the record for the next three items. I want to put on the record that we are not changing our policy. Our policy states that approval to advertise is endorsed at the community level. As our chair told us that there wasn't a quorum, we will approve it. This board meeting, if any board member wants to discuss the items, we can simply move the item from the consent agenda to the action item agenda.
Would anyone like to move it? You're okay with it staying in the consent agenda?
Okay, then I'll read the other four, and three, and we can all at the same time. Item B, NVX procurement contract, ITB 18-03, NVX work program 03629.060, construction service for the reconstruction of Northwest 82nd Avenue from Northwest 7th Street to Northwest 12th Street. $3,022,000 estimate, approval to advertise. Item C, NVX procurement contract number ITB 18-02, MDX Work Program number 300-56.060, construction services for civil infrastructures modifications for toll zones on State Road 874, State Road 878, and State Road 924. Estimate $2,316,792. Approval to advertise. And the final item D, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 19-02, MDX work program number 30056.051, construction and engineering and inspection service for civil infrastructure modifications for toll zones on State Road 874, State Road 878, and State Road 924, $545,300.
Very much. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved. Second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Approved unanimously. Okay, we're now going to move to the regular agenda. Mr. Counsel, thank you very much.
The regular agenda, item A, approval of fiscal year 2017 audited comprehensive annual financial report, disposal of fixed assets, and contribution of assets to other entities.
Board members, there's a copy of the CAFR in your packet, and there's also a copy of the popular annual financial report, which is the citizens' version. Marie, would you be able to walk us through this?
Certainly, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
This is the 2017 annual financial statements. Our external auditors presented at the last committee meeting the financial results as well as the compliance report that's included in your package. There's 3 action items that goes with the annual financial statements. It's disposal of fixed assets as well as contribution of assets to other entities. There was $4.7 million of asset disposal related to roadwork infrastructure that needed to be written off the financial statements, and there was an additional $3.5 million of contribution of assets to other entities. I believe $3.1 million went to the county as it related to work that we did in regards to the park and ride, and there was some additional work for ORT signage, off-system guardrail that went to the City of Miami and FDOT. So those are 3 action items.
Mr. Zaldívar, can we do all 3 together, or do we have to do them separate?
It all has to do with the CAFR, yeah. We can do it all together.
Okay, do I have a motion? Approve it? Second? Okay, open for discussion. Any questions? And none, seeing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Item B, approval of MDX fiscal year 2019 to 2023 5-year work program, transportation improvements, capital improvement, and renewal and replacement programs, $678.2 million for the 5 years.
Juan, if you please.
Oh, that's not the one. There we go.
Sorry. Good afternoon, board members. I want to quickly go over the work program, the 2019-2023 work program for approval. The work program for 2019-2023 is estimated at $678 million with the objectives of implementing system-wide safety, as we have discussed since June and July of this year, advancing our long-range projects, primarily the 836 Southwest Extension and the 924 Extension to the west, and continuing to enhance our partnerships with our sister agencies, the county, the Turnpike, and DOT. This pie chart represents the total work program cost and shows what we have in commitments. And really what we have is, right now, 64% of our total work program is committed under contract, with the remaining split up into new projects that are divided into new safety projects, continuing our renewal and replacement program, which is one of our trust indenture requirements, and other projects which include some of the projects that I'm going to be going over now in the presentation. So changes to the existing projects on the 836-29, and we just had the item to approve. We're adding this is the improvements for 87th Avenue and 836. We've fully funded the improvements to 82nd Avenue. This is one of the partnerships with the county where we're going to go ahead and build the connection between Northwest 12th and Northwest 7th Street to better the network of improvements that we're doing in that area. Under the 836-34 project, which is the 836 ramp connections to the Turnpike, the major changes here is we're taking on the project on our own. In the previous work program, we were going to be funding this with the Turnpike, and they were going to be building it for us. We've since now taken over our project, but we're also adding a component of the Turnpike's widening project to our project. So similar to what we've been doing, or what we've done in the past with the Turnpike, where they've partnered up and built portions of our work where it made sense to partner. Now they're going to be funding their portion of the work, but we're going to be taking the lead and building it for them, which is a managed lane ramp that connects west on the 836 extension. And then the 924-04, which is the 924 west extension, the major changes on this project is that we've added the north to east connection to basically complete all the improvements on the 924 extension to the west and everything that needs to get done on Northwest 138th Street. Inclusive of this project includes the work that we'll be doing for the county on Northwest 107th Avenue that will be funded by the county, and we have an agreement with the county already in place where they'll be funding those improvements. And then the 836-18 Southwest extension. What we've done in this the changes to this project is really advancing the right-of-way acquisition stage with the advanced acquisition stages or phases. And then we're also looking at advancing the construction of the first phase, working on the, preparing the RFP in conjunction with finalizing the PD&E. So the next steps for the 836 extension project is to finalize the PD&E, which is ongoing. We hope to have a public hearing in summer of 2018. The CDMP amendment is also now in the process with the county to get the CDMP amended to allow for us to build this project outside of the UDB lines. We're not asking for a movement of the UDB, we're just asking for the project to be allowed to be built outside that limit. And then in the springtime, we hope to come back to the board with a finance plan on how we're going to be able to move this project forward from a financial standpoint, and we're also going to be coming back to the board with the toll rate setting process. As you know, this is a new expressway and will require new tolling points. As I mentioned, we're advancing the right-of-way stages, so we're putting monies in to do advanced acquisition to allow for the first phases of construction. We're going to be working hard with the federal permitting process to allow us to expedite construction. And as I mentioned, we'll be beginning the preparation of RFP construction and design build documents so that once we finish the CDMP amendment and the PD&E, we can immediately go into the design build phase. New safety projects that we've added, and I'll try to go a little bit quick on this, but in general, the safety projects that we're adding cover all roadways, primarily State Road 112, but what they do is that they modernize, they eliminate operational deficiencies that exist today within the corridors that we have, 874, 878, and 112 and 924, but they're much needed improvements because with that we can improve the operations of the highway and also improve some of the capacity that's there. So the 449 project is the State Road 112 improvements to westbound 36th Street. This is only funded for project development, and we look to see how we can connect directly to Northwest 36th Street to bypass that intersection today where you have to get off and contend with Lejeune and Okeechobee Road. Project 450, which is also a connection, a straight ramp connection to Okeechobee Road. Again, eliminate those operational deficiencies of having to contend with the signals at Lejeune and Okeechobee. Also eliminating, what it does is that it eliminates the backups, which tend to cause rear-end collisions when you're waiting for all this traffic to cipher through the intersections. 451 is an auxiliary lane on State Road 112 between Northwest 27th Avenue and Northwest 17th Avenue. It's basically adding a lane to improve or lessen the friction that exists today with vehicles entering and exiting the system between that 2-mile stretch of road. 452 is an operational improvement project for 924 and Northwest 32nd Avenue. As you're exiting 924 to go east on Northwest 119th Street, you have to go through, you have to stop at 32nd Avenue, and then you also have local traffic that's getting onto Northwest 119th Street, so you have cars coming onto each other. So we're going to look at improving that and eliminating those friction points. Same as in 874, when you're coming off and getting into Kendall, we have the ramp that takes you to 878 or 874. It's a very low decision point. So what we want to do is improve the signing to make sure that people are in the right lane to eliminate that last-minute weaving on which way you want to go. 454 is the interchange with 874 and 878. Again, as you're coming off of 874 and getting into 878, you also have the ramp from Kendall to, you have 87th Avenue that comes in, and again, it presents those friction points where people are coming in, people are trying to get out, and what we want to do is try to see how we can make that better so to eliminate those weaving conflicts. And 455 is a project that we're looking at in cooperation with the county's SMART plan and transit plan, and this is a direct connection from 878 to bring you right to the Dayland station. This is a project that we feel is going to enhance the existing buses on the shoulder project that's been in service since 2006 on Kendall, on 874 and 878, and it will really also expand our initiatives to provide transit on our facilities. So the financing plan for this work program takes into consideration that we meet all of our debt requirements and our bond covenants, but it also takes into consideration the assumptions that we maintain the current stream of revenues. It assumes that we maintain the same traffic growth on our system. It assumes a cash funding or pay-as-you-go of 30% of the work program. It does require a financing of $250 million, so going out to the bond market as part of this work program is going to be a requirement. But the structure allows for the funding of the PD&E of the 836-18, which is the 836 Southwest Extension. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Toledo, but let's see if we get a motion first before we do some discussion. Do you have a motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
For discussion. Any questions for Mr. Toledo?
On your pie chart for the 5-year plan,
Yes.
biggest slice is for other projects. What exactly are you talking about? I know you talked about one new project, which was the Dadeland area one. Is this for implementing the strategic plan, or what is that 25%? That's about $180 million.
Those are, and I'm assuming you're referring to this pie chart for the uncommitted. Other projects take into consideration, it's really some of the projects that I've listed that are under project development that are not fully funded for construction. So we've listed out the projects that we have in the work program under the different phases. This covers the safety projects that are only funded for project development right now. It covers the PD&E projects that are not fully funded for construction, so the 924 East, the 924 West, the 836 extension to the Southwest. The 25% of uncommitted covers projects that are not fully funded for the next phases of construction and design, but are funded for design build. For project development.
So is it safe to assume that there's more projects than there is capacity under that 25%?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'll try. Is it safe to assume that there are more projects that are in the queue than there is money in that 25%?
That's correct.
Yes, that is
Yes.
correct.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I love the graph at the beginning, that it puts perspective of where everything is at. Questions on the 83618.
Yes.
And basically, this is more of a request. Is it possible that operations get a full presentation of what the public is seeing in terms of a presentation of the alternatives to what this is happening?
Absolutely. We
So
will
that
bring
way we all get a better understanding. There's a lot of new folks here, and I think we all need to get a better grasp. We're at 28 million, which means there's a lot more that's going to have to be expended, and I think we need to get a better understanding.
We'll bring that to the next committee of the operations and governmental.
And then if I may, on the safety projects, is there a order of priority where you're going? Because I have a preference. It is 112. I think it's our stepchild. There's a lot of deficiencies there, and I think that we need to get that going. So now that I told you my piece, go ahead and tell me which is your priorities.
We are prioritizing Stereo 112 at this time, so everything that you've seen there are the projects that we are wanting to advance in the immediate. That doesn't mean that we're putting other projects for 112 to the side. We're just looking for ways to advance that and then come back to be able to see how we can fund, because in this work program, I think we've covered a lot of the operational improvements that are needed. The renewal and replacement piece, which is the portion tied to the bridges, we need to do a little bit more homework on that before we can come back with a plan on how we're going to move those forward. But we do plan to have that before, or at least come up with a plan on how we're going to attack that before the end of the fiscal year, so we can present that to the board next go-around.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I have a backup question. Now that you said that, there's a $250 million that you're going out to bond. Is consideration being given that part of those monies will be going for the projects of the safety?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
$150 million makes the work program financially feasible, and the work program includes the entire system, including the safety projects.
Okay.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
One.
Mr. Board?
I think it'd be helpful, and when we itemize the projects, to understand which ones generate revenue and which ones don't generate revenue, so that we as a board can understand, are we approving 90% of this budget is revenue generating, revenue neutral, or deficient? I think that we've covered that in committee, and we still don't see it in the presentation.
That's an excellent point. It would be great if you could do that.
I think, yes, we can do that, but of what we've presented, if you see a number that starts with an expressway, a 924 and 836, typically those are major projects that are on the highway. They generate revenue. They're the bigger capital investments. When you look at the projects that are in the 400 series, which are the safety projects, those are typically just operational improvements. They're not considered to be revenue producing. That's the conversation we had at committee, and I think what we'll do is a pie chart to show where the dollars are going and how they're going from that perspective.
We'll provide that update to clarify that question.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Javier. And I think seeing it will help us. It's just sort of a visual, because you know by heart, but we come in from the cold needle down. Any questions, any more discussion? Okay, can we have a vote on this? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the work plan for 2019-2023 is approved. Thank you very much. Juan, I believe you have something else on behalf?
Sure.
The next item.
Take it right here.
Don't go too far.
Mr. Salvador, would you like to read the next item into the record?
Sure can. Item C. I'm here to serve. Item C, MDX Work Program Number 83634, State Road 836, new HEP ramp connections, $15 million. Approval of a locally funded agreement with Florida's Turnpike Enterprise to facilitate the construction of FTE ramp A-2B bridge by MDX.
The motion? Or Juan can explain it and then we'll do the motion.
This is for the project 83634, which is the ramp connections from the HEF to 836 West. This is a locally funded agreement with the Florida's Turnpike for us to be able to fund that component of the project that I mentioned in the presentation, where we're partnering with the Turnpike. Again, similar to how we've done in other projects where we've funded our portion of the work and they've taken it on. Now we're flipping the tables and we're taking on the work and they're funding their portion of the work that we will build for them, which is a ramp that connects from the Turnpike's proposed managed lanes to the 836 westbound direction. And this agreement is for them to fully fund the construction and the oversight of the job. It's not capped at this time. Even though we show a $50 million, that's an estimate, but the way the agreement is going to read is it will be actual costs reconciled at the end of the project.
Can I have a motion, please?
Yeah, they're paying,
Motion?
for sure,
You moving it, Ms. Gutierrez?
for sure.
Second. Just another highlight of our partnerships. And it's a big P. Maybe we should be MDXP, partners. Any questions, discussions for Mr. Toledo? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Zaldi?
Item D, MDX Procurement Contract Number MDX 18-02, MDX Work Program Numbers 40041, 40042, and 40043. Cooperative Purchase Agreement on FDOT Agreement Number PE 355 for the deployment of future and life cycle replacements of open road toll collection facilities for MDX, $33,609,745. Approval of CPA execution.
Steve, could you please walk us through the redo of the toll equipment?
Madam Chair, board members, please indulge me. I have a back injury, so I'm going to try to do this from here. I put a presentation together that includes a video as well that will give a description of the equipment and understanding of what we're doing. The outline for the presentation is to provide you an overview, the needs that we need for this transition, the hardware and software maintenance, cooperative purchase agreement, what are the advantages, and the recommendation. To begin with the overview, the lanes in the system on the Gratigny, Snapper Creek, and Don Shula are currently maintained by electronic transaction consultants, or ETC, as they're known. We are currently in a disentanglement phase, which will end in August of next year. Anticipating the needs of the future, MDX engaged ETC on the possibility of extending the contract that would include upgrading the hardware, which would be the cameras and the lane controllers, and add front camera systems to all the lane solutions on those 3 roadways. Unfortunately, we were unable to reach agreement with ETC. As such, staff conducted due diligence to consider other options. Outside resources to take over ETC's system and update the hardware and the cameras. We were unable to secure a vendor willing to take on the software maintenance. This poses a significant risk if the system crashes. So we used our Plan B, which became the viable option, a cooperative purchase agreement, or piggyback, on FDOT's new procurement that was executed earlier this year in May with TransCore. And I have a short 5-minute video that will demonstrate some of the components and functions of TransCore's Infinity tolling system and the maintenance, understanding also that we've also deployed these Infinity lanes back in 2015 and 16 on 836 and 112.
Welcome to TransCore. I'm Venta Cotton. I lead the team that develops the software for the Infinity Digital Lane System, the nation's leading toll collection system. Infinity is installed in over 3,000 lanes across the U.S. and supports all modes of tolling, from cash to all electronic to video tolling. We're proud of the fact that we design, customize, and assemble everything in-house, avoiding end-of-life and integration issues with third-party products. We do this because the future of transportation relies on technology and trust in that technology. At TransCore, we've been providing fully engineered tolling and traffic management solutions for over 80 years. In fact, we supported the country's first toll road in Pennsylvania in the 1930s, and they're still our client today.
Hi, I'm Todd Allman, the Director of Infinity Product Development. Once Ventus team completes any new software enhancements, we put the entire system through rigorous quality control and factory acceptance testing at our staging facility in Houston. This ensures every Infinity lane meets the highest quality standards and is properly configured before installing it in the field. This cuts costs for our on-site maintenance staff and disruptive lane closures, and even allows us to identify and fix potential issues before they occur. Infinity's modular design also makes it completely interchangeable and hot swappable, meaning no revenue is ever lost even during maintenance activities. Let's take a look at some of Infinity's main features. Infinity automatically identifies each vehicle entering a toll lane by either its RFID transponder or license plate. A unique transaction is then created to properly identify and associate each vehicle so that a correct toll rate can be applied. Infinity can detect, separate, and classify vehicles by axle count using in-pavement sensors, and by shape using LED-based infrared technology. These two subsystems complement each other to provide the highest accuracy in the industry. Infinity's high-resolution stereoscopic digital camera system accurately captures color images of every vehicle's front and rear license plates, even at 200 miles per hour. The cameras can be mounted overhead on a gantry or from the side on a pedestal and can be focused, panned, tilted, and zoomed from a remote location. The digital video audit module completes Infinity's functionality with an easy-to-use tool to audit the performance of the system and its users. Cameras are installed in the lanes and plazas to provide a detailed account of every vehicle and cash transaction and to monitor other employee activities.
I'm Ron Barr, and I manage the day-to-day operations of the Infinity system. Now that you know a little about our product, let's take a look at how it all comes together. Each Infinity system is designed and built to meet your specific needs. We assemble every product to highly engineered specifications here in our Houston staging facility. With the open view concept throughout the entire facility, you can actually watch your Infinity system being assembled, configured, and tested in a secure ISO 9001 lab environment. This simulates the actual live operation of your toll lanes. We also offer in-lane system acceptance testing at our world-class test track in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Here, we create some of the world's most challenging vehicle movement and road conditions to test and certify the performance and accuracy of our Infinity systems. After testing, each Infinity system is packaged and shipped from our warehouse direct to your installation location. Once Infinity is deployed in the field, our maintenance monitoring center tracks system performance in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The MMC is the hub of all maintenance-related activities. We couple our automated system monitoring tools with daily checks on system health and respond immediately to incoming alerts. In fact, 99% of the time, we can remotely correct issues from right here in the MMC. And if needed, we can dispatch a technician to the field for on-site assistance, so your toll lanes stay open and clear and traffic flows smoothly. From software development to maintenance, every step is done by TransCore people. Why do we do all this? It goes back to what Ventus said earlier. Technology is nothing without trust. Every Infinity system we deliver has been designed by us, built by us, and completely tested by us before we install it in the field. This ensures the highest quality and provides a level of confidence, both in the technology and in the people delivering it.
I hope this gives you a better understanding of the Infinity Digital Lane System and what drives us here at TransCore. We work hard every day to provide the most sophisticated and reliable tolling solution on the planet. Let us put Infinity to work for you.
And that's 8:36.
Okay, getting to the needs for the transition. As was pointed out in the consent agenda, electrical, communications, milling, and resurfacing for new axle detectors on the roadway are the infrastructure modification requirements. A cooperative purchase agreement with TransCore for a total of 14 toll zones that encompass 42 travel lanes and 24 shoulders on the 3 roadways. The total cost of this is $2.9 million. A turnkey maintenance contract to cover all the required maintenance of the system installed. The value of $22.7 million is a 10-year not-to-exceed price and would cover the entire MDX system, not just the newly installed lanes. All these costs are based on unit pricing directly off the FDOT's contract with 2 exceptions. What this spreadsheet shows is the actual breakdown of the cost of the lanes. The exception, as you can see on the number of lanes for 5-lane solution, the FDOT contract did not include a 5-lane solution. So this was negotiated at a cost based on the escalations as you see from the 2 lanes all the way up. Included in here is the need for the fiber lateral connections. What these are is at the 14 locations, we need to run fiber lateral connections from the shelter out to the cabinets that actually do the reading of the transponders as they go through. So, and that's a total cost of roughly $22,000, but the total cost for the toll replacement is $10,871,315. Software. The maintenance, a turnkey maintenance includes all the hardware and software maintenance, 24/7, 365 monitoring of the system at the TransCore Maintenance Monitoring Center and systems administration. The escalation of the monthly rate is contractually set at 1% annually. Full system software and hardware warranty for the term of the contract. This agreement has a termination for convenience clause and may be canceled in whole or in part at any time. The budget for this maintenance function is part of the toll operations budget and is approved on an annual basis. The contract also has detailed maintenance and performance standards with payment reductions to the monthly invoice for failure to meet these standards. The 3 areas that are subject to payment reductions are the corrective maintenance, the lane audits, and the lane availability. The reduction of the monthly invoice is capped at 25% of the monthly rate, which is just over $45,000 that can be reduced each month. This spreadsheet shows an actual breakdown of the monthly cost per year and the annual cost. Monthly costs begin at $181,115 a month, or around $2.17 million for the first year. The 10-year not-to-exceed price is $22,738,430. The pricing is for the entire MDX system, which is all 5 roadways and the host included. This contract was competitively procured with unit pricing for lanes and maintenance, allowing us to select exactly what was needed for MDX. It would result in MDX having the same toll system on all the roadways, providing system-wide uniformity. Combining all the roadways and the host under this new maintenance contract provides for a seamless transition as we move to the nationwide interoperability protocol when deployed in the near future. Small tidbit is also the savings of about $27,000 a month, or just over $3.2 million over that 10-year period, when compared to the current maintenance contract for the entire system. It should also be noted that the FDOT contract had a second vendor, Conduit, that would provide an alternative solution once they have completed and passed their testing in the next 12 to 18 months. Finally, the recommendations from staff. Staff is recommending board approval to replace the tolling system on 878, 874, and 924 using the piggyback process of FDOT's TEC contract with TransCore for a total of $10,871,315. Staff is also recommending board approval to exercise a turnkey maintenance option of the same contract and phase out the current maintenance contract with TransCore for an up to 10-year, not to exceed price of $22,738,430.
If you can have a motion?
Move.
Okay, we can open it for discussion. Any questions? Discussion? Secretary Wolf?
Yeah, I had one question. There was a slide that talked about built-in monthly maintenance cost increase, 1%. And I couldn't understand whether that was 1% per month or 1% total annual.
My apologies that I wasn't that clear. It's an annual increase to the monthly rate. So each year it would only go up 1%.
Okay, that very nominal amount, why is it so small?
Fortunately, the Turnpike had a good contract.
And this is a 10-year contract?
Yes, sir.
Oh, very good.
Other questions?
You know, that was funny, but today you're not going to win an Oscar on that one. We got it. We figured that one out. That was not an Oscar-winning performance on
I'm
that
not an
one.
attorney, sometimes I don't know the answer.
Come on, Mr. Secretary, you knew the details of that deal. There's no way we're going to bite that one. This is a hefty contract, and if I may, I have a couple of questions.
Please, right ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very nice. You're very fortunate. I'm sorry that you're ill during the holidays. I hope you recuperate fast.
Thank you.
The video was a very good video on the presentation of that company, but it said that they represent about 3,000 lanes that they cover. That left a lot of other states there that they are not involved in, which also means there's other companies out there, because most every state does have a toll expressway. So who are all the players that are also out there that are not these folks? Because they left, I mean, they were like this. They had a nice smile where they put their dots of where they represent. Who are all the other folks that are out there?
There are two other major vendors. Conduit is the other one, and Capsh. Those would be, I'd say, the three major players in the industry today. There are smaller ones, which includes ETC that's here, you know, what we have today. And Indra, I think, is the other trying to get into the U.S. market company. But that's it. When the Turnpike did this contract, as we did, we didn't get the responses that we expected from the lane side. They had three vendors who bid on that project, and only two were selected. The third was very high in price.
So the Turnpike contract has two of the three major toll lane providers in the United States.
Correct.
That's the,
So they're all in there.
They're all in there.
Exactly. That's what I was looking for.
And we did reach out to do whatever we could to see what we could do with them. The two that we had available to contract with would have been Conduit and TransCore, because they have the contract with the state. Unfortunately for Conduit, they weren't in the process of, they had not reached the finalization of their testing. That's another 12 to 18 months down the road, so that they would be able to integrate with the Florida system. They're still in that testing phase.
Okay. Why the suggestion of phasing out the current contract that we have with TransCore, the 112 and the 836, and rolling into this one?
The analysis that I did, along with the GECs, was comparing price. Right now, we have pretty much a turnkey maintenance for our system on 836 and 112 at one rate. Roughly, I think it's $124,000 a month. As the contract that is part of this TEC piggyback, it had specific values of number of zones and number of lanes. When you reach a threshold, then you had to include expanded services. if we were to transition 836 and 112 today, the cost would be more than what we're paying today. So we said, well, we'll wait. There's no reason to jump right into it because we haven't gotten these new lanes in yet. In the next 4 to 6 months, that's when we do the transition, and we will end or sunset the current contract and enter into the agreement with the new contract at that rate, which will be less than if we did the contract that we have today. If we added the new lanes as well as the old lanes, that's the $27,000 savings.
Okay, so that's where you're realizing the savings. Okay. And have we not realized that this contract has more value on maintenance than anything else? It costs more to maintain than it does to buy the software.
Over the life of 10 years, yes.
It's almost double.
Yes.
Yeah. We should start
It includes all parts. If something breaks, they got to fix it.
It comes to mind that we should consider as part of our business model, that we should consider getting into the business of this. We could be the provider to all the other agencies, and then perhaps we could reduce the tolls because of the savings. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Martinez?
Yeah, I don't know if this was discussed at the subcommittee. If it was, I apologize. Why are we piggybacking on the FDOT contract and not putting this out for bid to see if we can get competitive bids from other vendors of this type of a project?
Two answers to the question. The first is timing. We have until August of next year. Our expectation was that we were going to be able to extend our ETC contract and upgrade that system. That didn't come to fruition. So we also brought this information to the Operations Committee probably about a year ago and said that the state was going under a procurement. Shall we take on that cost and do our own procurement if they're already doing one for the same things that we need? We actually worked hand in hand with the Turnpike to ensure that it was going to meet the needs of what MDX would want.
Okay,
so the RFP would have been the same.
So let's back up. So this was brought to our attention in a year ago at Operations, correct?
Yes.
And the decision of the subcommittee at that time was to move forward in this way. Okay. And we were part of the, we weren't doing it with them, but we certainly were making sure that our needs were being satisfied with whatever the FDOT was going to do, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this isn't something that was just really done. It's been taking a year to get to that point. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we need
Mr.
to
Gutierrez.
clarify something.
I'm going to. Go ahead.
Let me clarify something that you just said. There was no decision made on that
That was recommended.
committee.
Correct.
Okay? That was a presentation that was given.
I stand corrected. I apologize for that.
No, he's the one that said it. I
Okay.
don't mean to correct.
So then, it was a presentation done, what was, if you recall, what was, if anything, brought forth by the members of the committee, if you recall? Support and against, was it brought to us? Mr. Renzer, what was the decision there?
It was not an approval item, no.
No, it was a
discussion item.
informational item, giving the board, the committee, a heads up of what was coming up. Our desire, as we expressed to the board at that time, at the committee at that time, was to try to negotiate with the existing vendor, ETC, and see if there was a way to enter into an agreement with the existing lanes and the existing maintenance.
Okay.
I even flew to Texas, and there's a lot of things I can't speak out here in
We
public
understand
because
that.
it was part of settlement, but they rejected it, and they didn't. So then what we did is we said, let's take the next step to try to be efficient, and we tried to find another vendor who would take over ETC's lanes and maintain them. We had people come in who said, yes, I used to work at ETC, so on and so forth. Long story short, didn't work. Then we went to the third step, all along working with the Turnpike, knowing that they were competitively procuring this. And Board Member Martinez, the reason why we keep the Turnpike abreast, and I think the short answer is, it's economies of scale. The number of lanes that the Turnpike put in their RFP for pricing from all these different vendors is, I don't know, I want to say 5-10-fold to MDX, so we're benefiting from an economies of scale that was bid on a much bigger system. So that's the conclusion. But to get to this conclusion, we went through many steps that took a long time, and timing was an issue. Timing of implementation was an issue, knowing that we have disentanglement concluding in August of next year.
I guess my concern is that this is a 10-year contract,
It-
the way I understand it. If I'm incorrect, please clarify that for me, please.
Please clarify that, please.
It is a not-to-exceed 10-year contract.
Okay.
We can terminate in whole or in part at any time,
Okay, that's important.
Without penalty?
without penalty. It's a termination for convenience.
Of course not. I know
But the
that.
penalty then becomes who is going to maintain the
That's
system.
the point.
Then you're looking to go to spend another capital project to put in a new system.
Mr. Board?
So because this is a vertically integrated system with hardware and software match, terminating it would mean turning it off and.
No,
nobody
I know
can
that
take it
it's
over.
unrealistic. I know that.
So
I know that.
That's that.
That's self-explanatory based on the way it's set.
So, Madam Chair, one more comment?
Sure.
Thank you. This system will manage a significant portion of our revenue. And in the conversations yesterday, and thank you for taking the time, my only concern was the consequences of a lack of performance. So if the system goes down for hours or a day, the penalty that the vendor would incur would be on page 7, the last item would be a maximum monthly payment reduction for all combined metrics capped at 25% of the monthly rate. Not of our loss, of their revenue. So it is a very small fraction of the potential loss, and the penalty is not in any measure to them as it would be to us. But I would defer to Secretary, is that standard industry practice?
I don't know.
Actually, if I may, in this particular contract, it's higher than industry practice. Industry practice is actually a lower threshold for that
15.
type of a penalty.
It's usually
So
15%.
Typically 15% in many of the contracts. In this particular one, the Turnpike upped it to 25%.
Mr. Meyer?
Just to comment and a question. I believe in the ETC contract, we also had that similar clause, termination clause.
That is correct.
Okay. That said, the question is, and this may be somewhat of a stupid question at that, but TransCore, is this something that they're on board with? We go through this process and they say, well,
We wouldn't be able to bring it before you without having the vendor agree to the terms and conditions that they bid on the cooperative purchase.
just wanted to
agreement.
make sure. Thank you.
Yes.
No problem in verifying, Mr. Meyer. That works. Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, now we come to add-on item E. In your packet, you'll find a copy of a resolution which is reaffirming MDX's commitment to the east-west corridor on the SMART plan. And I just want to note that according to the long-range plan, the 2040 long-range plan from TPO, this has a value of $4 million, just for the record.
No.
Oh, you know what? I'm bad.
No.
Shoot me. My bad. No, this has no value. This is, well, it's affirming our partnership, and the partnership that we have later on, that we talked about on the 82nd Avenue.
Yes.
I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm so excited about the partnerships. Okay, so this is a resolution reaffirming our commitment to the east-west corridor. Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez, for keeping me on track.
If I may, Madam Chair, I can read it into the record, or at least read the headline, the title into the record. To be very specific, it is Resolution MDX.
Toledo read it. You should make Toledo read it. That's a joke. because he doesn't like to read it.
It is
I can read it.
Miami-Dade Expressway Authority Resolution Number 1703, a resolution reaffirming the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority's commitment to manage and operate the east-west corridor of the SMART Plan by deploying a premium rapid transit service along State Road 836 and to facilitate the infrastructure development for private and public autonomous vehicles and freight platooning on the MDX Express Technology lanes. Whereas on May 31st, 2016, the MDX Board of Directors adopted MDX Resolution 1621, expressing support for the Strategic Miami Area Rapid SMART Plan. And on June 22nd, 2017, the Governing Board of the Transportation Planning Organization adopted Resolution 2117, approving fiscal 2018 to 22 Transportation Improvement Plan, and urged the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority to present to the TPO Governing Board its formal commitment. And I'm paraphrasing. On July 20th, MDX committed by formal presentation to the TPO that it would undertake the management and operations of the east-west corridor of the SMART Plan by deploying a premium rapid transit service along State Road 836. That would also include the future extension of State Road 836 into West State and Southwest Kendall, maximizing the use of existing infrastructure, including the express technology lanes. Whereas the challenges of securing federal and state funding for building, maintaining, and operating new fixed rail services, MDX maintains that a contemporary, innovative, and efficient expansion of 836 will help reduce traffic congestion along the county's east-west corridor. And whereas transportation and mobility technology is undergoing exponential growth and evolution, which has a great potential for making roadway systems safer, eco-friendly, and more efficient. So now, therefore, be it resolved that MDX hereby reaffirms its commitment to the TPO to undertake the east-west corridor by deploying a premium rapid transit service, that MDX, Section 2, that MDX shall also facilitate the infrastructure development for public and private autonomous vehicles and freight platooning on those XT lanes, and that if any section, paragraph, clause, or provision of this resolution shall be held to be invalid or ineffective for any reason, the remainder of the resolution shall continue in full force.
Thank you for not making me read that. It would have been terrible. Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second. Open for discussion, Ms. Gutierrez.
Okay, thank you very much. I have some questions. Can you please further explain what does freight platooning on XT lanes means?
Yes. If I may, when we developed the XT lanes, the Express Technology lanes, and did the strategic master plan.
One I just knocked you
And
off.
did the strategic master plan for MDX. This is a lane, the inside shoulder of State Road 836, that is being developed to be a smart lane. So we're going to run premium rapid transit on it. The board has adopted a budget for us to go out to the market and entertain the private sector to run express bus in the short term. But in the long term, we look at that lane as being a facility where autonomous and platooning of vehicles can go on it. The issue, and it's ironic because the secretary and I had a conversation about this before the meeting started, this is an asset. We own the highway. As we move, the latent demand on our facilities are such that we cannot continue to accommodate the demand. The capacity is not going to be there. There's a canal, there's lakes on the south side, the airport's on the north side. So how do we continue to move people and goods on these corridors? And we believe that using technology and using a better creation of our lane, which was part of our strategic plan, is how we're going to do it, and that's what that means.
So the sum in essence, the XT lane is the express lanes.
The express technology on 836,
But
the
the
inside shoulder.
platooning of the vehicles means all vehicles inclusive of the buses.
Correct. Well,
All vehicles, like
No.
my vehicle, if
No.
I pay.
right now, no.
No.
Right. The only vehicles that would be on those lanes would be express buses, autonomous vehicles, or connected vehicles. That's the only thing that we're looking at to deploy on that inside shoulder at this particular time.
Okay, a follow-up. You said it in the statement when you were explaining it. You said a premium rapid transit service. The word premium, I just want to understand. or better clarification. Premium to me means you have to pay for it,
Yes,
fee. This is not going to be free.
we fully expect that the service that'll be operated on 836 will be a forfeit,
Okay,
on-demand
it's not
forfeit.
free. There's no one
It will not be free.
getting on that bus and it's going to be a free ride of somehow. Someone has to pay for the expense of building and maintaining. Okay, just further clarification, there's a line that says that we are going to design, construct, operate, and maintenance. That means it's all-inclusive.
Yes, it's turnkey service on 836, and as we've expressed to the county and to the transportation department, is we don't want to compete with them to take the transit riders that use the existing transit system. What this system and what this service is going to try to achieve is to pull the choice rider, the person who commutes on 836 and pays a toll. We want to attract them to use this service, not take away from the existing transit service.
Okay? Follow-up, final question, I think. Cost analysis, do we have any idea what the investment, what this endeavor is going to take?
We've already made an investment for the lane that's under construction now. I think the estimate for not only 836, but the park and ride facility and the improvements on 874 and 878 exceed $40 million. In the budget of the authority that was adopted in May of this year, the board set aside $2.5 million, I believe, so that we can go out to market and see what service can be provided to us in the short term when these lanes are available.
I need further clarification to what you said. I know all the other programs that you're talking about. This specific one, do we have a value on this specific one?
The value.
It's the same one? All the other pieces
Yeah,
that you're saying
it's the same.
are part of this?
It's the same one, yes.
Okay, so in essence, we're already committed to all the others. They're actually in play right now.
Correct.
Okay, what over and above does this deploy?
All this is saying is that we are reaffirming that we are taking over the east-west corridor on State Road 836, and that we will be deploying express technology lanes to provide service on 836. That's in a nutshell what this says.
Okay.
Reaffirming that, making it very clear of where we stand.
That we're committing. And does this conform to the agreement that we made to the TPO, the chair, when you were there in person and he asked us to commit?
This is exactly what we presented to the board back in July 20th of 2017, that I was there with Chair Fano in the presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Secretary Wolf.
I've dealt with Florida's Turnpike Enterprise and various people employed with it for several decades, and I know that many people in the toll highway industry think of the facility as a cash cow, that you generate as much money as you can, you build more roads that you have determined to be more cash cows, and your efficiency in collecting tolls, building new facilities that pay for themselves, it's a goal to generate that money and expand the system. And I think that's probably pretty common within the highway toll industry. And many people in the industry would say, what are we thinking here at MDX, that we want to support park and ride lots, mass transit? These take our revenue and we're spending money to do it. It's absolutely the right thing to do. I would direct attention to our mission: serve as an innovative transportation agency dedicated to the enhancement of mobility in Miami-Dade County, committed to bringing more efficient, market-driven, user-friendly management to expressways. There's nothing there about managing our money tightly and expanding our system. If that's required for mobility, then we should be doing it, but the key is mobility. And this is a mobility project. I would also point out that when I have a meeting downtown in the evening and I get out at 5 and try to come west, 836 is not actually a very good option. We have a lot of latent demand. We have very poor operating characteristics. We're not pulling traffic off of our road by having a transit option. We have more traffic than we can service. And there's a real limit on the main line of 836 of how many lanes we can add. There is a limit. So I don't think we're competing with ourselves by putting a transit option out there. I think that we're going to face more difficult or interesting decisions in being an innovative transportation agency as we deal with new technology. And I think this is just a first step of being creative and different in the way we use our asset. We really exist to serve mobility in Miami-Dade. We have to be prudent in the way we manage our finances, or we won't be in business. We won't do that. But I find this to be a very prudent step in the right direction for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Wolf. Anybody else? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. We've adopted the resolution. Thank you very much. Board members, staff gave a presentation at the joint committee meeting regarding Bill 1049 that passed during the 2017 legislative session. During the presentation, various aspects were discussed, and a request was made to staff to prepare an analysis of the finances of MDX. Were MDX board to enact this reduction of tolls and apply the consumer price index, I would like staff to please present the memo and discuss the analysis. Marie, will you be presenting? Mr. Tobel will be presenting? Perfect. Thank you very much.
Randy Tobel, Hilltop Securities. I was asked to look at what would happen to your ability to finance different projects if different various scenarios happened. Okay, that's... The first scenario that we looked at is a straight 5% reduction on the existing system. What we did is we looked at this with no CPI adjustment whatsoever, and then we looked at it with CPI adjustment. In this case, I wanted to show you what the lost revenue represents. It is starts with $11.75 million in 2018, and it grows to $21.68 million by 2047. The other thing I want to point out to you is those dark bars. Those bars currently represent money that's already programmed to pay for the current capital program you just approved. So when we talked about earlier $250 million, that number will go up if this reduction goes into effect, because we'll have to make up that shortfall of those monies, plus any additional costs that go with it. We looked at various ways tolling systems utilize their cash when you're talking about a system. The first one, the green line, we looked at it as fully leveraging. That means we took 100% of the lost revenues and we projected how much debt we could issue exactly dollar for that using a 5.5% interest rate. This method actually produces the most dollars today, but costs the system, gets you the least bang for the buck over the life of the 30 years. You lose, in today's dollars, $223 million. That means $274 million is actually going to go to the bondholders as interest expense over the life of this issue. So it's not the best utilization of your dollars, but it gets you the most dollars up front. The second scenario we looked at is the light blue line, is what we do on a normal course of business here at MDX. We have 2/3 of it going towards debt and 1/3 for coverage. That 1/3 for coverage actually generates $166 million over the life of the issue. But if we were to actually look at a bond issue that it would support with that 66%, it's approximately $150 million. You couple that with the little bit of pay-as-you-go during the first 5 years, you could get $188 million worth of project financing over the first 5 years. The royal blue line is the total amount of money that we lose. This is almost $500 million over the first 30 years. The reason that we look at that is your pay-as-you-go funding on an ongoing basis. This produces the money that A, is our equity for other projects, or B, for those projects that really aren't revenue-producing projects, as in case of the safety projects, where you're doing something that has a better and higher use than actually generating money. The fourth line, the one that a lot of system toll roads use, is they use that revenue as a leveraging device for the projects that can actually support themselves, i.e., as Mr. Secretary was pointing out, building roads that actually produce own revenue, and you go one upon another. That doesn't happen a whole lot in urban settings, because very few urban toll roads actually can pay for themselves. If we were to look at that, your cost per lane mile would be through the roof. So what ends up happening is you have to buy down the cost of that by using your equity, i.e. the blue line. So it's a combination of all these different things. But if we had a self-producing toll road, we'd be losing almost $1 billion of capacity. It's a very big number. Next, we looked at what would happen if we started off with that 5% reduction, and then we put in the CPI, that annual CPI adjustment. We have that same revenue stream, but it doesn't look quite so large because the revenue streams going forward start growing quite a bit. We start down low, and then after about 2.5, 3 years, we get back to where we started, and then we start our incremental climb up. I do want to point out that I fought showing this, but it's what I'm going to do. The green line shows additional revenues that can be generated from this using 100% leverage of $691 million. Now, $691 million is a big increase, but of the total amount of additional proceeds that would be generated, $1.35 billion would be paid to interest expense during this time frame. So 100% leverage is not always the best. And the other thing I want to point out on that revenue stream, we use traffic engineers' CPI adjustments, and in 2033, that was where they stopped their growth. So all we did was put in system growth after that, so that's why the line flattens out quite a bit. So the actual capacity would be even higher than what we showed, but we're trying to be a little bit realistic because we do not project CPI. The light blue line, the one that the system, the way we do it, the $1.14 billion, that represents all the leverage that we could be doing, plus a little bit more for the pay-as-you-go during that early years. The total amount of projected revenues during this was a little over $2 billion. So that is what CPI would do to the entire system. The navy blue line, again, the leveraging, which doesn't happen, if all things were being perfect in the world and you could find projects that could generate enough money to pay for their own principal and interest, you could use your money as a credit enhancer and actually generate $3.4 billion. I'm going to tell you that that's highly unlikely. Then what we did is we were asked twofold, what did it cost us to lose that 5% on a theoretical basis? Then we looked at it in our existing system, how does that impact us? We looked at it with a number of different scenarios. We looked at our current capital plan, and you can see we built in, with no reduction, the additional $250 million that we used to carry a 1.7 to 1.8 coverage levels with no capitalized interest. It drives the costs to a coverage level 1.65. Very healthy. We can go through there and everything can be done and it's fine. If we do the 5% reduction, we're going to have to sell some capitalized interest to make up for the money I showed you earlier that we'd lose. So our issue cost goes from $253 million to $346 million. That $346 million, even though we're not generating $1 more for our project cost, it helps pay for the additional capitalized interest so that we can pay for those bonds and the interest on those bonds during this time, because we have to have that money to pay for our project costs. When we go through all those different things, we're selling an additional $87 million of capitalized interest. Capitalized interest is important to get through a project where you're utilizing all your funds. Once it's out, it will have a future cost to you on additional projects down the line. Then we looked at the current capital plan with the 83618 with no reduction, i.e. we looked at a program that generated $900 million of additional cost. That $900 million was staged in 3 individual time periods, and this is very important. We cannot do $900 million tomorrow. We need to be able to stage this in because we have to have pay-as-you-go. If we don't have that additional pay-as-you-go to buy it down, then that $900 million will choke us off and we won't have our coverage levels. Again, the state, when they do their financings, they come in with all their money up front. They don't even start a project until all the funding is there on day one. We accelerate projects with the idea that the projects are needed here. So we're taking a little bit of risk by using our ongoing operating revenues to buy it down as we're building it, not before we're building up and building our cash reserves. Those 3 bond issues in 2019, 22, and 25 incorporate our current $230 million of construction proceeds for the existing capital plan plus the $300 that we need. The first bond issue would have been $712 million, the second bond issue $418, and the third bond issue is $181. Again, you'll notice that those numbers drop precipitously is because after our 2022 timeframe, we now have a bunch of additional pay-as-you-go available for this program. And I do want to point out, it's very important to know that any money that leaves the system for any other reason other than to pay this construction program could make this whole financing plan fall flat. So if you take money out, put it for additional projects, or you're using it for any other sources, these numbers will not stay intact. Of those 3 bond issues that I was talking about, we would pay interest costs of $1.9 billion. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is we currently have an existing outstanding debt of $1.4 billion. When we're adding all of these different revenue streams, we're doubling our debt, outstanding bonds, and the additional interest expense. And I forgot something. It's also important to know, I didn't comply with all your bond debt requirements. These all have more capitalized interest, and they're all back-end loaded, i.e. Debt all principal in the later years, so it's interest only for a number of years. That's the only way you could leverage it up fully. Because we accelerated the plan close to 4 years, and we didn't have the original pay-as-you-go that was necessary to keep it under our current debt plan. Capitalized interest, we're at zero, jumps to $322 million. That's the capacity that we're losing. But the pay-as-you-go funding was almost $750 million. That's our buy-down. That's our equity. We're using all our cash to 2025 with the 836-18. So no more projects. Then I also looked at it with a 5% reduction. Oh, but the coverages are a little under our 150 with no reduction, but they're so minor, I think once I get all the solid details that's going to be coming, i.e. the actual draw schedules, a little bit better revenue streams, I'm very confident I'll be able to keep those at 150 and make it a very marketable transaction. The next step, with a 5% reduction, I cannot make that statement. The coverage levels drop significantly below the 150. There's not a whole lot of engineering you can do other than maybe some capital appreciation bonds that are very expensive and would have a very negative impact on your ratings. But it would be a possibility. Those levels with the 1.13s and 1.25s, we got down to 1.3 once. We had to do a lot of work to get ourselves back into the 150 and better level. And our credit ratings at that time were in the A- category. So we could be losing 2 notches in our credit if we're going back in that direction. The final one, we looked at it with the CPI adjustment, with the 836-18 and a 5% reduction. We still have to sell more capitalized interest because we're losing 20 some odd million dollars in those early years that we would have used for pay-as-you-go. So it's not a one-for-one positive write-up. The other thing that I can point out is we can get to the 1.5 coverage without utilizing 100% capitalized interest. I was able to structure this with 50% capitalized interest on the first 2 bond issues. There's capacity, if you have CPI, to not only do this project, but all the safety projects that are scheduled but not yet funded, and some of those other projects that are available to you. I did not look at all the different various scenarios, but until we see them and we know what they are and when they're coming in, we have left a lot of capacity there. Your total bonds on that side is a $1.2 billion. You'll notice it's significantly lower than the other 2, and that's only because with the revenue streams, you don't have to sell as much capitalized interest. I just wanted to, I put it in picture form in here, and you can see all of them stay above, significantly above the 1.5 coverage level, which is 1.5 isn't quite where our A1, A+ type rating is. That's closer to an A credit. Our A1A is closer to 1.75 to 1.8. So we may have a financial impact if we drive ourselves down to this level, but you shouldn't be a slave to ratings. If you have a project you need to do, you need to do it. But you lose the 5%, 836 is not viable. Now, the last piece I'm going to say on this is It's also important to know that all these assumptions, I have a little footnote, it says it's issued under the current bond indenture. That is probably a little bit more significant. We're going to need a bond validation suit to be able to prove that the way we interpret the impact of the bill actually doesn't impact us. We'll have to go through a bond validation. If we do, then these numbers stand up. If that bond validation was to go against us, then you really don't have capacity. Really not much at all, because you'd be restricted to your current outstanding duration. So our final bond issues right now are in the 2040 range. That's as far as you could go out with your current bonds. After that, you'd be in a very subordinated role on the way your revenue streams go through, and you would also not have control over your rates at that point and the ability to leverage at all. You're essentially going into a maintenance mode. And that was based off our discussions when we were going through with your bond counsel and disclosure counsel on whether they could actually issue debt. So once we get the validation from the Attorney General's office that we're good, these numbers are good, until then, this is where we're standing. I included in this is a recap of all the pertinent numbers. If you have questions, I didn't want to go too much into detail, but if you have questions on what any of the numbers mean, I'm more than happy to go through them. We ran a number of scenarios, both with the 5% and additional reductions, so we have a good sensitivity on how the impact is. And finally, I was asked to look at what is CPI and what does it mean to the actual value of your tolls over the duration of this. CPI has been recognized across the country as the inflation adjustment for purchasing power. Here we just use an annual inflation rate of 2.7, which is below the historical norms, but who knows what the new norms are going to be with the amount of debt that the U.S. government has outstanding. But you start with $100, and in 30 years, you're down into the 40s. So that's what, without indexing your tolls, that's what you're driving your cost going forward. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Don't go far, Randy, because I would imagine my board has questions. Opening up for discussion, questions, comments? Your board.
So, Randy, when we looked at this, this last slide in which we look at our purchasing power without any CPI adjustments, you know, I hear the Secretary talk about how we have to be innovative in terms of delivering technology because our throughput is limited, and the board has made a decision not to index the tolling. And when you look at this graph, it's inevitable to conclude that at some point that has to change. It's not a question of if, but a question of when. And being that the needs that everybody's talking about how much we have to increase the system, everybody's scrambling to try to figure out new solutions. And when I look at the graphs that Randy produced and the increased capacity that is there following the House resolution, it's provocative. It's worth looking at. It's worth considering. It's worth opening up for discussion to see what we would be able to do if we looked at some of the guidance that was given to us. It is, although there are sensitivities in terms of obvious sensitivities with our customers, but the system is, following your description, it's inadequate. So I was just, as the new guy on the block and not knowing the history of how we got to where we got, although I have been given a version of it, there might be more than one version. This is provocative. This produces, is this worth looking at on a serious basis to understand how we could deliver better service to our customers? And that was, I appreciate the effort that you put in analyzing this. And before people consider it, I think it's worthy of a serious discussion. This increases dramatically what we're able to do for our customers.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I would just like to first thank you, Randy. Very informative context and what you provided us. I'd have to echo Board Member Board's statements, and that's all.
Mr. Wolf?
Just a quick comment. FDOT, I believe, is the only state agency that cash flows our projects, contrary to what you said. And we have a couple of DOT ex-senior managers here that probably verify. We generally have, I think, obligations of about $7 billion outstanding and $250 million in cash.
Well, when I said that, I said before you start a project, your revenue projections have to be enough to support the debt at that time, and the only way that you can get to that debt level is to buy it down with your equity contribution.
Agencies have to have the cash in the bank to sign a contract.
Before
we have the expectation of revenues when we need to pay it. We don't have the cash in the bank.
When you start a project, you sell the bonds to produce that with your cash on hand to start a project. That is the way the projects have been funded.
Okay, well, you're talking about debt. I
Yeah.
was talking about our work program.
Yeah.
Debt is one element of it. Very good.
Thank you. Anyone else? Gutierrez?
Well, you may not like the way I interpret what you said. There's things that fall off the table on the work program, and you kept mentioning the A3618. That's off the table. You said that several times. What else would be off the table? Because as I see from everything that you said, if we follow what this statute says, there's one thing for sure. There is a perpetual, annual, in the dark charging of a CPI 2.7 increase to this community, anybody that's going on this road. 2.7 is the number that you put there, a CPI, and if the CPI grows, it's higher, okay, then it would be more. And why I call it in the dark is because our current policy is that we have to have public hearings to discuss it. This statute basically is in the dark because this community would not be informed that on an annual basis, they're gonna get whacked. So I find this a total farce. It's like doing business in a shoebox where nobody else gets to see, the public is not gonna see. Because, yeah, one time they get a 5% reduction, but every year from here on to eternity, they get a CPI whacking. Yes, I understand eventually there's going to have to be a CPI increase. Eventually, you have to catch up. But this is annual. Annual, the tolls will increase. I read it. It went from 60-something to 95 cents. Excuse me if people are now screaming and hurting because it hurts. We're going to do this, reduce 5%, and then every year go with the CPI? Wow. Man, that's, you know what? That's being hypocritical. Totally hypocritical to this community. That's the way I read it. What I want to know is, if we do something like this, how many other jobs fall off the table that we can't do? And is there any excess money? And can we hand over a check to Miami-Dade County? Because in reality, that's what they want. That's what they need. We need to be good partners. So I want to know, we do this, we put the burden on the backs of this community by going in and going with a whacking CPI, perpetual tolling, you never have any control. What's going to happen? Is there money left to give anybody anything and to do anything?
With the annual CPI, there was additional capacity that I did not monetize because I didn't have the projects and the timing, all the different scenarios that would be evaluated. I don't know the different projects, if they generate revenue or if they just leave the system. But there is, if you do an annual CPI, there is some additional revenue. I don't know the dollar of that additional revenue. I didn't go that direction. I was looking at just the projects that I was asked to look at.
And Board Member Gutierrez, if I understood your question correctly, about the CPI, the automatic, but then on the other end of it, if you were just to reduce 5%, what comes off the table? And I think what Randy showed in the table is that our base case requires us to issue $250 million worth of debt. If you reduce the revenue on the top line, we will have to issue an additional $111 million just to make the current program work. If the board doesn't want to issue an additional $111 million worth of debt, then that's the amount of project capacity that has to come off the table to keep the 253 on the table. So there would be a significant number of projects that would come off the table, and I think that's one of the ways to look at this analysis.
That's where the point of discussion should begin. How many things fall off the table if we go in and we do a 5% reduction? Because 5% reduction sounds like 5 pennies. Are you serious? 3 to 5 pennies. Is that meaningful to anybody? What at the end means, how much we're losing. I read from what you said, over $200 million, okay?
Yes.
Over $200 million. That's where we're losing. But we're also losing immediate projects that we have to cover. Because if not, we're putting this community in debt. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're just selling bonds, paper money. It's not really good money, just putting this community in debt. And that CPI.
If you lose the 5%, you're going to lose $233 million of future projects and an additional $75 to $100 million of additional projects that you're going to have to fund above and beyond. So I think we talked in the committee about $315 million. I think that is what you're going to be losing at a 5% reduction off the existing program.
Mr. Martinez.
So, Randy, let me break this down. So on the 836, we have 3 gantries, correct? So right now, if you have a SunPass, you are paying 70 cents per gantry if you do the full from the Turnpike all the way to downtown, correct, Mr. Rodriguez?
Correct.
So a 5% reduction would be 3.5 cents per gantry. So we'd be looking at a 10-cent reduction, 10.5 cent reduction for the person who does the entire trip. If they go both ways, and if I recall, that is a significant, small percentage of our users go both ways, use the full 836 in both directions, correct?
Correct.
So it's 21 cents a day that they would be saving. If they did that trip for the entire week, it'd be about $1.47 a week they'd be saving, approximately. If they did, I don't know anyone that does it 7 days a week, but let's say for hypothetical purposes, that's about the amount of one colada de café a week in comparison to what it would affect, how it would affect our ability to do the projects that we're looking forward to. The savings to the clients would be negligible, practically not even noticed in their SunPass bills or anything else, just as, unfortunately, the 2.7% increase every year would not be noticed immediately as well. But within 2 years, they would be back to the same rate we are today, and we would already have affected our ability to bond out and do these projects. Correct, Randy? Is that, from my understanding, if we, more or less?
If you just do the straight 5% and you don't add the 836, then you could still be in the same place. You just have an additional 100 million above where you're currently.
Not doing 836.
Not do 836.
So again, we're going to be costing hundreds, if not thousands of jobs. We're going to be not trying to find ways to improve the transportation situation to save someone basically a large cup of coffee. I'm not sure how that is going to benefit anyone in any way, shape, or form. And I actually do believe, and I am a supporter of us having to publicly have hearings in reference to the CPI, because if we're going to raise the rates, we should own it. That's why we don't do it under the automatic. That's why it was a big deal for all of us on this board that voted against making CPI automatic, so that we would be held accountable one way or the other. It would have been easier for us, quite frankly, just to say, yeah, it goes in automatically, but that's not what this board chose. This legislation basically allows both things. You get the reduction now, but within 3 years, you're going to be paying more.
Which is why we did the analysis.
Right,
So that
but
we had the
it's
facts.
important, but that's why it's important to express that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Board.
So, just listening to the arguments, I'm confused. Either 5% is a lot or it's a little, but you can't have it both ways. So either CPI compounded becomes a big number or it doesn't. But, you know, either the 5% reduction is in material and the CPI is also in material, because in the terms of order of magnitude, they're very similar. We're not reducing 5% and CPI is 40%. CPI, in fact, is a smaller amount. And just to share with you, 86% of our transponders pay less than $25 a month.
Correct.
So a 2% increase, if you were talking about the Café Cubano, the 2% increase on the $25, it would take you 3 months to buy one Café Cubano.
Exactly.
Right, so, I mean, and then that's my first point. If it is in material, it's always in material. That's the first point. And the second point is, I agree with you in terms of public hearings, we should own it. There's no discussion about that. The third point is, this is only a matter of when, not if. It will happen. Our purchasing power on slide 7 is undeniable. It's going away every year that we do not take action. Every year, there's a discount that we're providing for those consumers. Every year. Their payroll is indexed. The real estate taxes are indexed. Power and light is indexed. The only thing that we're providing that is not indexed is water and tolling. We should go to public hearings and we should vote affirmatively. But if we're going to deliver the service that they're needing, we just need to have extra capacity to deliver that service. That would seem to me. Now, one voice, and it's the holidays, and I don't want to kill this because I don't think that's what, this is a discussion item, but it would seem to me that we can't talk on both sides of our mouth.
If I may respond, Madam Chair. And I'm not necessarily disagreeing that we shouldn't have the debate. I'm not saying that one way or the other. It's an active debate. My concern is that this legislation actually has us doing both things. First, they're making a negligible reduction that affects our ability to move forward. And at the same time, they're saying that we're going to increase the rates performed by CPI without having the public hearing that we have to discuss. So if there is a position that we feel that we need to increase, because as you say, it's just a matter of when, not if, then that's something we should be discussing. But then why are we going to compound that problem by first reducing it by 5% now, and then going up again later? That, to me, is actually the argument to make here. That's my point.
Very good point.
Secretary Wolf.
The federal gas tax is not indexed, and it has declined for 25 years. And it's a major impact on the trust fund. And it's been politically infeasible for them to adjust that tax. The Florida state gas tax is indexed. There's probably a bunch of people in this room that didn't know that, the difference between those. It's not a matter of being a black box and not telling people, trying to hide it. It's just indexing is a way of staying even, not getting ahead.
Yeah, but this conversation, thank you very much. The conversation that we're having is a very different conversation. The conversation starts from the statute. And this statute, created by these legislators, basically says for us to reduce the toll 5%, and at the same time, it goes into a CPI increase on an annual basis. That is the conversation that we're having, and the effects and the cause and effects of doing what that statute says. It is not independent of what it is that this board has for years and years decided to do independently of what it wanted to do and respect this community. I am not talking about once in a blue moon CPI, because this is not the conversation that we're having, because the statute is very clear about an annual CPI. So it's clear. So this legislator very smartly will go out to market and say, oh, I reduced it 5%. Wow, you did a grand job. Thank you very much. That's only the conversation for this line today. But guess what, MDX? Annually, you're putting a CPI. And for those that ride the system, in 3 years' time, it will start to hurt. So in reality, ladies and gentlemen, CPI, call it whatever you want to call it, that's a toll increase. The bottom line, it's a toll increase. And yes, we need it, perhaps we need it, but we haven't needed it so far. So if the conversation is the statute is calling for two things simultaneously happening: a reduction of 5% and a CPI on an annual basis. Anybody that knows numbers, of course you want that inflation increase. Of course you do. It gives you more buying power. But you don't need it annually. But that's not what the statute says. The statute says every year. So you know what? It is in a box, because then we're just, you know what? We're basically saying, yes, legislator, let's go ahead. Let's just have perpetual tolling with the auspice of, let me give you a break today, 5%, and then from year on after, let's go and give you a whack. 2.7 will be minimum. God knows what it's going to be depending on the inflation. But go ahead. Let me see what other projects we want to do, because we haven't identified them yet. So let's go ahead. Let's give them all the money in the world because we haven't identified. But the conversation today is what falls off the table if we go for a 5% decrease. What falls off the table? What falls off the table? And it isn't just a 3618 that we couldn't manage and do it. There's many other projects that we would have to do for 3 years. Then later, yeah, you have a CPI and you have it every year. And so what? We don't know those people, so who cares? That's basically what we would be saying. Because, you know, in Tallahassee, they make a lot of decisions that later we then discover when it hits our pocket. It's so easy to have a sun pass, but you don't really know how much it is you're paying. It's okay. I guess that's okay. Aren't you upset that you don't know exactly what you're paying? I'm upset that I don't know what I'm paying. So I can't be sitting here and thinking, oh, let's go ahead, let's reduce 5%. No, if we're going to reduce, let's make it meaningful. Okay? Let's make it meaningful. Let's really reduce. But then let's reduce because we want to reduce, not because somebody up there in a shoebox, because obviously, if you don't know my finances, you are dealing in a shoebox, okay? Because you're asking me, let me drop all these projects that will benefit this community. Let me give you a 5% discount this year, and let me whack it. Let me hit you with the bat on an annual basis with a CPI increase, which, by the way, this year could be 2.7, but we don't know in 5 years what it's going to be. It could be a lot more. That's nice. Well, that's right. Why are we not going to be upset about doing that? Isn't that the way Turnpike does it? That's exactly the way Turnpike does it. They do it like that every year. They increase their tolls every year, and no one talks about it. Because actually, the survey that we got to see this morning, when it was earlier today, they don't know the difference. They don't know who they're paying. It could be Turnpike. It could be FDOT. But no, we're close. We're right here. It's MDX. We just did a toll increase. That's all we did. Hey, by the way, in case you didn't know, I'm voting no. And this should be a conversation that we should vote on it, because we need to address the statute. It's a discussion item, and I understand that. Believe me, if anybody knows about policy, I know about policy. But at some point, this board needs to vote on it, because we need to answer. You need to give a firm commitment and address that statute. All those folks deserve to know how this board feels, whether it feels good or not. They have earned the right as being elected officials, not my official but elected officials, that we should, as a board, as a body, as a whole, up or down, the way we really feel. For me, I don't vote for increase in tolls. I don't vote for inflation. I live in this community, and I like the people here, and I know that they're hurting. I like what we're doing, and I think we're doing it just right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Any other discussion? That's what I was hoping for, healthy discussion. We'll continue. Continued. Thank you very much. All righty. Great. We have one more discussion item, which is the update to the transportation and infrastructure.
Actually, this discussion,
We're all together?
we made a presentation at the joint committee meeting about a presentation that Bernie Escobar made to the the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee in Tallahassee, and it was an update on House Bill 1049. There's multiple elements of the House bill. There was good governance, which we said we would comply with all of it. They got on our case because we had not updated the website to put all our contracts. The following Friday, everything was up on the website. There is a policy and legal disagreement on the toll rate setting. That is why we've asked the Attorney General for an opinion. That's why we've gotten our counsel to give us an opinion. The only folks that can set toll rates and toll rate policy as given to us by the state of Florida under the transfer agreement and incorporated into our bond documents is this board. At the committee, the board said, can you guys do an analysis? Just let us know what these impacts are. The board has adopted multiple policies, wisely adopted multiple policies, that as I've instructed our staff and Randy, our financial advisor, if we want this major project of 83618, which is a massive project, and we want to advance it 4 years, I told them, don't look at the policies we have. Give me a finance plan that would work. Maybe what he comes to us in the spring is, look, we might have to use our policy on CPI specifically for that project to make it work. But the analysis that was before you was specifically given to us by this committee. Just do this comparison. 5% reduction, base case, 5% reduction, CPI. You're either going to comply with the entire bill or you're not. You can't pick and choose elements of the bill. That's what's before you.
Ms. Gutierrez?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That's the point that I'm making. You can't pick and choose out of the statute what part you want to adopt. It's either you decide, supposedly independently, which way is the best way for MDX for this community to take. But it goes without saying that at some point, maybe you don't want to do it today because this is a discussion item, this has to come for a vote, a position of the board to clarify and provide a statement as a whole, as policymakers, how we feel and what are we going to do about this statute. We basically declined because we are supposed to be independent because of the transfer agreement. MDX was not free, okay? These expressways were not free, which that needs to be considered. But we need, as a whole, to take a vote on the statute. That's why I said it's not a conversation of if and when we will do CPI, because I do agree with our treasurer, if and when there may be a need for a CPI, and I understand that. I am talking about the statute. The statute basically goes in and it's a hat. It's a hat that basically says 5% reduction on your toll and a CPI. So those two are aligned. That's what the conversation is, and that's what this board needs to take a vote on, and stop having it there as a cloud. We need to make a decision, and it needs to be precise and done. Now we know the analysis.
Thank you very much. And I think what we can do is discuss this a little bit further in the spirit of time. I'm going to be...
But I couldn't agree more with Ms. Gutierrez. I do want from, and it's probably my legal mind thinking, I would like, before we make a decision on a vote, to get the opinion of the Attorney General's office, because it may or may not influence how I'm going to vote, but it's something that knowledge is power. and to have at least their opinion, see if it concurs with our general counsel, or if it differs at all, it is something I believe this board should have a copy of. I'm a little troubled that it's taken this long to get an opinion, because I think we requested it some time ago. But, sometimes things work in their own specific timetable. But I can't agree more with Ms. Gutierrez that we do need to make a position. And this board and this legislation, quite frankly, is inconsistent. On one side, it wants us to donate to public transportation. On one side, it wants us to reduce tolls. On one side, it wants us to essentially start increasing tolls. There's no consistency in what it says. It's kind of like, it's a hodgepodge, for lack of a better word. So that is something that I think we need to discuss, but I'd like to hear from the Attorney General's office as well.
Alrighty, well, let's table more discussion for the next meeting. Okay, so I'd like to make a few comments, if I may. The board will indulge me. The board members, this past month, we memorialized the board's position on the TPO's request for participation fee. I shared MDX's response with the committee on November 16th. You all got a copy of it, and then it was sent the same day. The TPO request, our response, and their reply are all included in your package. I hope you've had a time to look at all that. You'll remember when I got elected, one of my mantras is collaboration and transparency. So I wanted to give you an update on our meeting with Chairman Bovo and Director Bouclet. Chairman's request, we met him yesterday to discuss our position. Mr. Rodriguez and I listened to the TPO's reasoning for implementing a participation fee. MDX, as an implementing agency who is investing hundreds of millions of dollars to improve mobility in Miami-Dade County, our position should remain unchanged. As clearly stated on the invoice, the participation fee is intended to be used to hire lobbyists at the state and federal level, host peer exchanges or special events, and engage in critical activities to advance TPO priorities, particularly the implementation of the SMART plan. It is not about the money, and I really need to emphasize that. It is not about the money or whether we support the plan or not. This is simply a belief that our toll dollars should be used to implement as many projects as possible that move our community forward. As an example, we just approved the county project of Northwest 82nd Avenue, which does have the value of the $4 million that I noted, that will benefit the districts of Commissioners Sosa, Soto, and Diaz. Board members, this is just the latest example of our partnerships. My big P word, the partnerships. But we all know that there have been many examples of this in the past 12 years that I myself have been on the board and noted and taken part of. I am sure you will agree we will continue to be good implementing partners to the TPO and all the TPO members. We will do everything possible to advance the community's priorities, but we simply will not participate in the fee. Mr. Martinez.
I have a question for council. Carlos, I'd like to request a new action item where this board passes a resolution in support of Ms. Fano's position so far as this fee. And she's 100% correct, and let me explain to you why. Number one, last year we also were positively part of the Park and Ride, if you recall, that we did jointly as well. We've taken possession of the 836 East-West Smart Plan as well. We've shown absolutely, without question, our absolute support and cooperation with the TPO and with the state throughout the years that I've been here, and I think it's going on 9 years, my God. But I agree with you about this $22,000. I don't think we should be paying for the lobbyists for the TPO. We support their programs. We use our own dollars. We use our toll our clients collect. Of course, it's something that benefits our clients as well, but there's no need for us to be paying for a user fee for lack of a better word when our participation is dramatically, significantly much higher than the benefits of the lobbyists. So I'd like to know if I could turn this into an action item where this board votes in support of the position that the chair has taken in this matter.
There's nothing inappropriate about what you're discussing. I mean, there's rules, but, I mean, we've done this before.
Okay. So I move that this board can support the position and that is being taken by Chairwoman Fano in not wanting to, in refusing to pay this $22,000 fee at this time. I hope I can get a second or from somebody here. Now it's open for discussion. Now, I guess, I'm sorry. Chairman,
Open
you're
for
still in charge.
discussion, thank you. It's okay.
I lost my spot.
It's fine.
So-
Former Chair Martinez.
So, again, I emphasize, in all the years I've been here, we have always been supporters of anything that is partnership with either the state, local, county governments. We've had representatives from local municipalities, Miami Lakes last year, if you recall, and others that have come here, and we've always had open arms. That doesn't change. And I think it's something that has been always part of what MDX has done. I do have a problem with this user fee, and I had a problem with it when it was passed, and it's never changed. So I'm glad that, Chairman, that you sent out the letter. I couldn't have supported your position stronger, and I believe this is what we should do. That doesn't change the fact that we're going to continue to work with our partners at the county or at the state. We're going to take over the 830, we're going to be responsible for the situation on 836. We're going to finish the park and ride in Dolphin, and we're going to be responsible for that as well, and other parts of the SMART program that benefit not only the county, but our clients. This, to me, is something I feel we should not, A, pay, because I don't believe it's conducive to what our dollars are supposed to be for in any way, shape, or form. So I hope that the other members of this board will come out and support this position. Thank you.
Your comments? And can we say it's our position? Because it's not my position. I want it to be ours, collaboration.
Our position, but you're our leader. So-
Thank you. That's nice. I
But
appreciate
our
it.
position.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And at this time, I want to ask you all to please keep Maria Luisa and her mother in your thoughts and prayers, as well as our Vice Chair, Audrey Edmondson, for a speedy recovery. Board members, I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for everything that you've done for our community, for our board, for our colleagues, and wish you a healthy, happy, and safe holiday season. And I look forward to an exciting 2018. Motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second? Thank you.
You make it? No, you just... There's some sandwiches in there.